"Dad, why do those black triplets look exactly like us?" the youngest asked. And the man felt the ground shift under his feet because the truth he buried for years was about to surface in front of everyone. The question hit him like a sudden blow. Sharp and public, spoken in a bright afternoon where nothing was supposed to break. A father stood frozen on a crowded school field. The smell of cut grass thick in the air, the sun warm on his neck. And four small faces stared up at him, waiting for an answer he did not have the courage to give. Around them, parents laughed. Children ran. Teachers clapped. And just a few steps away, three boys with deep brown skin and the same eyes. The same smile, the same way of standing, were laughing together like reflections in a broken mirror. The father's name was Daniel Hale. He was a man shaped by silence. People noticed him because he stood straight, even when he tried not to be seen. His shoulders were wide. His walk was slow but steady. There was a scar on his wrist that never fully faded, and his eyes carried a weight that made strangers soften their voices without knowing why. He wore long sleeves even in heat, and when he spoke, he chose his words like each one mattered. Daniel had once worn a uniform. Years ago, before the quiet life, before the school lunches and bedtime stories, before the questions that cut deeper than bullets, back then his world smelled like metal and dust, like fuel and sweat. His days were measured in heartbeats and trust. He had learned how to stay calm while everything around him burned. He learned how to carry people who could no longer walk. He learned how to make promises he might not live long enough to keep. The war took many things from Daniel. It took friends whose laughter still visited him at night. It took pieces of his sleep. It took the easy way he once smiled. But it also gave him something he never expected. A bond that did not care about color, borders, or bloodlines. A bond sealed in fear and loyalty. There were three men who stood beside him through it all. Marcus, Elijah, Samuel. They moved like brothers. Watched each other's backs, shared food, stories, and silence. They joked about life after the war, about kids and houses and Sunday mornings. They talked about names they liked and lessons they hoped to teach. One night changed everything. The air was heavy. The sky pressed down. The mission went wrong in a way missions sometimes do. Too fast, too loud, too final. Daniel remembered the heat, the ringing in his ears, the weight of Marcus in his arms. He remembered Elijah's hand gripping his vest, refusing to let go. He remembered Samuel's voice, calm even as the world fell apart. Daniel lived. They did not. He carried them home in ways no one could see. He carried their families. He carried their unfinished dreams. And when he returned to a world that moved on too quickly, he made a promise he never spoke out loud. Years later, when Daniel built his quiet life, married and became a father, he tried to let the past rest. His children were his anchor. Their laughter softened his sharp edges. Their trust felt like something sacred. Then came the letters, the families of Marcus. Elijah and Samuel had struggled after the loss. Grief did not come alone. It brought bills, fear, and hard choices. Daniel helped when he could, quietly, without names or praise. Money, time. Presence. One request changed everything. All three men had wanted children. All three had talked about it. And before the final mission, they had done something practical and hopeful. Something soldiers sometimes did when facing the unknown. They had preserved the chance of life, just in case. Daniel had been listed as the contact. The choice was heavy. It was not about science or rules. It was about promises made and whispered jokes and shared danger. It was about carrying forward something good from something broken. Years later, three boys were born into three grieving families. Triplets by chance, by timing, by shared hope. They grew up apart but connected. And when life pulled them to the same city, to the same school, fate placed them within sight of the man who had helped bring them into the world. Daniel never planned for his children to meet them this way. Now the question hung in the air. Why? Do they look like us? Daniel felt eyes turn toward him. Some curious, some confused, some sharp. The world had a way of judging before understanding. A few parents whispered, a few brows tightened. The silence grew heavy, pressing against his chest. He knelt in front of his children. The grass stained his knees. His heart beat slow and loud. He searched their faces and saw only trust. Sometimes families are built in ways that take time to explain. He said softly, without needing raised voices or defenses. The children waited, before he could say more. A teacher stepped forward, her tone careful but firm. There was a rule about gatherings, about questions, about order. The moment was becoming uncomfortable, public, awkward. Daniel stood. He nodded. He did not argue. He never did. Silence had always been his armor, but silence does not mean weakness. Across the field, one of the triplets looked back. The boy's eyes met Daniel's, and something passed between them. Recognition. Respect. A quiet understanding that did not need words. The tension did not break. It grew later that week. Whispers followed Daniel. Assumptions grew louder than facts. Some parents pulled their children closer. Some smiles faded. A few comments slipped out, careless and sharp. Daniel absorbed them the way he always had, steady and unreactive. His children noticed. They felt the change. They asked gentle questions at night. Daniel answered what he could, protecting them from the weight he carried. Then came the school assembly. The gym smelled like polished wood and old banners. Families filled the seats. The triplets sat together. Daniel and his children sat a few rows back. The air felt tight, expectant. The principal spoke about community, about respect, about belonging. Words floated but did not land. Then a name was called. Daniel Hale. He did not move at first. He never liked attention. But his children looked at him, eyes wide with pride and worry. He stood. The principal spoke about service, about quiet contributions, about a man who had given more than most without asking for anything in return, about promises kept long after applause faded. As Daniel walked forward, something shifted. 3 women stood in the crowd. Mothers, their faces held strength shaped by loss and love. They nodded to Daniel. Silent thank you that held years of shared understanding. The triplets stood. To the room went still. The principal continued, explaining the story not as a secret, not as a defense, but as a truth rooted in honor. 3 men who dreamed of fatherhood. 1 brother who carried that dream forward. 3 children who were connected not by skin, but by sacrifice. Daniel stood in the center of it all, hands steady, eyes calm. He did not speak. He did not need to. One of the mothers stepped forward. Her voice was clear, unwavering. She spoke of the night Daniel came to her door, of the promise he kept, of the life her son lived because of it. Another followed. Then the third. The gym felt warmer, softer. Daniel's children stood beside him now. They looked at the triplets not with confusion but with wonder. The pieces fit together in a way that felt right. Family's not always about what you see first, Daniel said at last, his voice low and even. Sometimes it is about who shows up when it matters most. The words settled deep. Another line followed, one that would be remembered and shared. Love does not ask permission from fear. The final words came not as a defense, but as a truth. Honor does not need to be loud to be real. The room rose to its feet, not in noise, but in respect. Applause came later, gentle and full. Afterward, the field looked the same, but everything felt different. The whispers were gone. The space between people closed. Children ran together without labels. Parents spoke with humility. Daniel watched his children play with the triplets. Same laugh. Same tilt of the head. Same stubborn kindness. He felt the weight he carried lighten. Just a little. That night, as the house settled into quiet, Daniel sat on the porch. The air smelled like rain. The past did not feel so heavy. The future felt wide. He thought of Marcus, Elijah, and Samuel. Of promises kept. Of lives woven together in ways no one could fully predict. The truth had come out not as a wound, but as a bridge. And in that quiet, Daniel knew something important. Silence had carried him this far, but love had carried everyone else the rest of the way. Some stories are not about answers given in the moment. They are about truths revealed when hearts are ready to hear them. If this story moved you, share where you are watching from. Share what family means to you, and subscribe for more stories that honor silent strength, unseen sacrifice, and the power of choosing love when the world expects division.